4 to 6 inches. That's what women actually choose when nobody's watching. Not 8, not 10, not the ridiculous numbers you see thrown about on the internet. 4 to 6 inches, and I've got 30 years of clinical evidence sitting in my filing cabinets that proves it. I'm Dr. Sophie Caldwell, and today I'm going to tell you something that might just change the way you've thought about yourself for decades. Right, before we crack on, do me a favor. Tap that like button and pop a comment below telling me where you're watching from today. I've had chaps write in from Manchester, from Edinburgh, from Sydney, from Cape Town. It's brilliant seeing this community grow, and honestly, it helps other men find information they desperately need, but are often too embarrassed to ask their own GP about. So go on, let me know where you are. Now let me ask you something. How many times have you heard someone make a joke about size? How many times have you sat through a conversation at the pub where some bloke's bragging about what he's got? How many times have you scrolled past something on social media that made you feel, well, a bit inadequate? I'd wager it's more than you'd care to admit. And here's the thing that really gets me. Most of what you've heard is complete and utter rubbish. It's myths. It's locker room nonsense. It's the sort of thing that gets passed around like Chinese whispers until nobody even remembers where it started. I've been a urologist for over 30 years now. Started my training back when Margaret Thatcher was still in Downing Street, if you can believe that. And in all that time, working with thousands of men and couples across the NHS and in private practice, I've heard the same worried question more times than I could possibly count. Am I enough? Am I normal? Is there something wrong with me? And I want you to know something before we go any further. If you've ever asked yourself that question, you're not alone. Not by a long shot. In fact, I'd say the majority of men I see, particularly those over 50, carry some version of this worry with them. It sits there quietly, doesn't it? Nibbling away at your confidence, making you second-guess yourself. And today, I want to help you put that worry to bed once and for all. Because here's what the science actually tells us, not what the films show you, not what you overhear in the changing rooms, the actual, proper, peer-reviewed science, and I promise you, the findings are going to surprise you. In a good way. Let's start with the biggest myth of them all, shall we? The idea that bigger is always better. That single phrase has caused more anxiety, more insecurity, and more relationship problems than almost anything else I can think of. It's fueled entire industries. It's made certain companies very rich indeed. And it's absolute nonsense. When researchers actually studied what women prefer, and I'm not talking about what women say when they're having a laugh with their mates or trying to wind someone up, I'm talking about what they actually choose when they're completely alone and nobody's judging them. The results were crystal clear. Most women prefer average. Yes, average. Not enormous, not extreme, average. And that's not just my opinion after 30 years in clinic. That's what the data shows across multiple well-designed studies. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. These researchers were clever about it. They didn't just hand out questionnaires and ask women to tick boxes. Because we all know people sometimes give the answers they think they're supposed to give, don't they? Instead, they looked at behavior. They analyzed purchasing patterns. They examined which products actually sold best across major retailers. And what they found was fascinating. When they looked at best-selling intimate products across 8 major distributors, do you know what the most popular lengths were? 4 to 6 inches. Let me say that again, because I really want it to sink in. 4 to 6 inches. That's not extreme by any measure. That's bang on average. And when they looked at girth, the circumference, it was also firmly in the normal range, usually less than 4.5 inches around. Think about what that means for a moment. When women make completely private choices, with no pressure, no judgment, no one looking over their shoulder, the overwhelming majority choose average sizes. Not the massive ones you might imagine, the average ones. And this brings me to something I really want to address because I've seen it come up again and again in conversations with patients and in comments online. There's often confusion about the numbers. One study says 5.5 inches is average. Another mentions 6.5. People get muddled and start worrying they've somehow fallen short. So let me clear this up properly. The scientifically established average for an erect penis is between 5 and 6 inches in length. That's the real-world average when you measure actual men. The slightly higher numbers you sometimes see, around 6.5 inches, often come from studies looking at products, which tend to be marketed as slightly larger than reality. It's a bit like how clothing sizes have changed over the years, isn't it? A medium today isn't what a medium was in 1985. The point is, if you fall anywhere in that 5 to 6 inch range, you are completely, utterly, boringly average. And average, as it turns out, is exactly what most women actually want. Now here's something else that came up when I was reviewing what men are actually asking about, and I think it's really important. A lot of chaps focus entirely on length. They're measuring themselves, worrying about centimeters, completely obsessing over that one number. But here's what the research consistently shows. Girth matters more than length. Let me say that again because it's crucial. Girth, the thickness, matters more than length. Why? Well, it comes down to basic anatomy, doesn't it? The vaginal canal isn't particularly deep. On average, it's about 3 to 6 inches when relaxed, and it only expands modestly with arousal. Going significantly beyond that depth isn't pleasurable for most women. It's uncomfortable. Sometimes it's genuinely painful. But the width, the feeling of fullness, that's where the nerve endings are concentrated. That's what creates sensation. So, if you've been measuring yourself lengthwise and feeling anxious, I want you to stop for a moment. You've been focusing on the wrong thing entirely. The average girth is about 4.5 to 5 inches in circumference. If you're anywhere near that range, you're perfectly equipped to provide pleasure. Full stop. I had a patient come to see me last year. Lovely chap, 72 years old, recently widowed, and starting to date again after 45 years of marriage. He was absolutely terrified. Hadn't been intimate with anyone except his late wife since 1978, and he'd somehow convinced himself that he wasn't going to measure up to modern expectations. He'd been reading things online, you see, falling down rabbit holes, getting himself into a right state about it. We had a proper chat. I showed him the research, explained the anatomy, talked about what actually matters. And do you know what he said to me? He said, "Dr. Caldwell, I've wasted 50 years worrying about something that doesn't even matter." 50 years, half a century of unnecessary anxiety, and I don't want that for you. I really don't. Let me walk you through 5 common mistakes that men make when thinking about this topic, because understanding where the thinking goes wrong is half the battle. The first mistake is believing that women want extremes. Most men assume women dream about enormous sizes. 10 inches, 11 inches. The sort of things you see in adult films. But those films aren't real life, are they? They're fantasy. They're specifically designed to be exaggerated. When you look at what women actually choose privately, as I mentioned, it's consistently in the 4 to 6 inch range. And there's a very good biological reason for this. Extreme sizes aren't comfortable. They cause pain. They create anxiety rather than pleasure. A woman's body is designed for connection, not for endurance tests. The second mistake is thinking that length is more important than fit. I've already touched on this, but it bears repeating. Studies consistently show that how well things fit together matters far more than raw measurements. Too much length can cause discomfort by hitting the cervix. Too much girth can cause tearing or soreness. What women's bodies respond to best is something that feels right. Something that allows them to relax and be present in the moment, rather than bracing themselves or worrying about pain. And here's the emotional side of it too. When a woman feels physically comfortable, she can let her guard down. She can actually enjoy the experience. she can connect with you. If she's tense or worried about discomfort, that connection simply can't happen in the same way. So fit matters enormously. And average, by definition, fits well with average, which is what most people are. The third mistake is comparing yourself to media fantasies. The adult industry thrives on exaggeration. Camera angles are specifically chosen to make things look larger. Performers are selected because they're unusual. None of it reflects daily reality for ordinary people. Yet men watch this material and then look down at themselves and feel inadequate. It's like watching the Olympics and feeling bad that you can't run a 4-minute mile. Those athletes are statistical outliers. They're not the benchmark for normal human beings. Here's the truth about real-world measurements. The vast majority of men, over 90%, fall between 5 and 6 inches in length when erect, and 4.5 to 5 inches in girth. That's the bell curve. That's normal. If you're anywhere in that range, you're in the same boat as almost every other bloke you've ever met. The fourth mistake is ignoring what women actually tell us. Now, I know surveys can be unreliable. People sometimes give exaggerated answers because they think it's expected. But when researchers look at behavior rather than just asking questions, the pattern is clear. Women consistently choose products that are average in length, comfortable in girth, and practical for actual use. They're not chasing extremes. Their bodies respond best to what feels safe and pleasurable. I want you to think about this logically. If a woman is choosing something for herself, something completely private and personal, and she consistently chooses average sizes, what does that tell you? It tells you that average is what works. Average is what feels good. Average is what women actually want when there's no social pressure to say otherwise. The fifth mistake, and this is the biggest one of all, is believing that size equals satisfaction. It simply doesn't. Women's pleasure is far more influenced by factors that have nothing to do with measurements. Clitoral stimulation, emotional bonding, relaxation, feeling desired, feeling safe, feeling connected. What makes a woman feel truly satisfied isn't inches. It's whether she feels seen by her partner, whether she feels respected, whether she feels wanted. Those are the things that create real intimacy. And here's the beautiful thing about those factors. They're all things you can cultivate. They're all things you can get better at. They're not fixed like physical measurements. They're skills you can develop throughout your entire life. Now, I want to address something directly that I know some of you are wondering about. What if I'm below average? What if I'm significantly smaller than those numbers you mentioned? Is that really enough? Here's my honest answer after 30 years of clinical practice. Yes, in the overwhelming majority of cases, it is enough. The vaginal canal, as I mentioned, is only 3 to 6 inches deep on average. The most sensitive nerve endings are concentrated in the outer third, the first couple of inches. That means that even men who are on the smaller side of the spectrum are anatomically capable of providing pleasure. But more importantly, penetration is only one aspect of intimacy, isn't it? It's not even the primary way most women reach climax. That happens through clitoral stimulation, which has nothing to do with size at all. So if you're smaller than average, focus on being an attentive, generous, communicative partner. Learn what your partner enjoys. Pay attention to her responses. Use your hands, your mouth, your words. Be present. Be connected. Those things matter infinitely more than centimeters. I had another patient, must be 10 years ago now, who was genuinely microphallic. We're talking significantly below average. He came to see me absolutely devastated, convinced he could never have a satisfying intimate relationship. We talked for a long time. I was honest with him about the physical realities, but I was also honest about what the research shows regarding satisfaction. Fast forward 5 years, and he sent me a letter. He'd met someone. They'd got married. They had a fulfilling intimate life. He wrote, And I'll never forget this. You helped me understand that I'm not my measurements. I'm so much more than that. And he was right. He absolutely was. So what can you actually do with all this information? Let me give you some practical steps you can take away from this conversation. First, stop comparing yourself to unrealistic standards. Understand that the vast majority of men are average, and average is exactly what most women want. Every time you catch yourself worrying about measurements, remind yourself of the research, remind yourself of the biology, remind yourself that you're almost certainly perfectly normal. Second, focus on building confidence. And I don't mean arrogance, I don't mean swagger, I mean genuine comfort in your own skin. Women sense that instantly. They can tell when a man is at ease with himself versus when he's secretly riddled with insecurity. Confidence is attractive. Self-acceptance is attractive. Obsessing over measurements is not. Third, and this is perhaps the most important one, build genuine connection. Learn to read your partner's signals. Communicate openly about what feels good and what doesn't. Prioritize her comfort and trust. Make her feel seen and desired. Those skills, the ability to be present, to listen, to respond, those are what create real satisfaction for both of you. I know this topic can feel heavy. Perhaps you've spent years, even decades, carrying this worry around with you. Perhaps you've avoided intimacy because you were afraid of being judged. Perhaps it's affected your relationships, your self-esteem, your willingness to put yourself out there. But I want you to hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are not less than other men. You are enough exactly as you are. And here's something else I want you to consider. If you're watching this and you're over 50, over 60, over 70, you actually have tremendous advantages that younger men don't have. You have patience. You have life experience. You have wisdom about what really matters. You have the ability to slow down and be present rather than rushing through things. And those qualities, genuinely, are what women value most as they get older too. The frantic urgency of youth gives way to something deeper and more meaningful. And that's a beautiful thing. The next time you catch yourself wondering about inches, I want you to remember this. The science shows that most women prefer exactly what you already are. It's not about chasing extremes. It's not about measuring up to some impossible standard. It's about showing up fully as yourself. Being present, being connected, being confident in who you are. If you found this helpful, do tap that like button and subscribe to my channel where I share more evidence-based information about men's health. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message, share this video with them. Because here's the honest truth, the truth I've learned over 30 years of practice. Intimacy isn't about numbers, it never has been. It's about presence. It's about connection. It's about confidence. And those are things that every man at every age can build and develop. I'm Dr. Sophie Caldwell. Thank you ever so much for spending this time with me today. And remember, small changes, the right knowledge, and the right mindset can bring you comfort, freedom, and confidence, no matter what age you are. Take care of yourselves, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.